Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. Joined as always by Sean Engel. You can find Sean on the Xbox machine at Sean E247. That's Sean spelled S-E-A-N. I am Rich Maletto. You can find me on Twitter, X Machine at Fantasy Bosco, all spelled out. This podcast is brought to you by Fantasy Guru and the Elite Plus Network. Please check out the fantasyguru.com website. You can find all the content there by myself, by Sean, by our whole team and staff. And hey, there are a couple of crazy promos going on right now. If you want 12 months of racing, not football, NBA, NHL, MMA, PGA, pretty much everything but football and baseball, $40 gets you all 12 months. Can't miss out or can't beat it. Don't miss out on our NASCAR racing content. The horse race, man, horse racing was a great time last week with the Kentucky Derby. It was almost as crazy as a finish as NASCAR. And for a short time, if you want the all-in MVP, everything package, all our DFS, all our betting for every single sport, all our elite data, all the Discord action, every channel in Discord, use the promo code 50SPECIAL, SPECIAL. That gets you 50% off our all-in package, taking down the price to an unbelievably insane cost of $400 for 12 months. That gets you everything. Every single sport and then some. So please check that out at fantasyguru.com. Sean, what is shaking and baking, man? We had one heck of a NASCAR weekend last weekend.
Yeah, actually, they said it was one of the craziest weekends with any activity involving racing and motorsports this past weekend. You mentioned it there. Horse racing, Kentucky Derby, still a form of racing there with that crazy photo finish. And then F1, you even had a race where Max Verstappen didn't even win.
I didn't even know that. I did not. I thought Max walked away with. I didn't know that. I'm going to have to go check this out now.
Nah, Lando Norris took it. He got his first ever F1 win.
Lando took it.
Yeah.
Oh, now I do feel bad that because F1's kind of dead to me after the Andretti thing, but I can't lie. I'll have to check that out because that's interesting because that's not a name you've heard around a lot. Not in circles in the last couple of years anyway. So interesting, very interesting. And they were down in Miami, weren't they?
Yeah, the Miami GP, which people were talking about some of the crazy food prices at the Hard Rock Cafe over there over on social media.
There's this whole battle sometimes with F1 NASCAR, and it drives me nuts because I'm old, right? And man, I long for the days in USAC with the midgets, and they would go NASCAR, they would go Indy 500, they would do all types of racing. We had Mario Andretti back in the day went F1 racing. Michael Andretti left IndyCar to go F1. You brought up horse racing. I enjoyed the Kentucky Derby. I enjoy racing is racing. I miss the Speed Channel. I watch snowmobile racing, boat racing. I don't care if the trophy trucks were phenomenal. They were just on the other night with Sheldon Creed leading the way. I will watch any racing out there. The Kentucky Derby was. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching that. It's a minute and a half. But, man, there's a great angle coming out of the turn where a couple of horses' butts are banging off each other. And you can see jockeys fighting for lines. And that was a crazy finish. And, look, NASCAR had the closest finish in history ever.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy stuff there, Rich. Actually, why don't we start recapping the weekend while we're at it there? Let's talk about Kansas there, Rich. But before we get into the Cup Series, let's talk about the Truck Series race there, Rich. What did you think of that one?
I was not shocked to see Corey Heim do his thing. I pushed him early in the week, and we had a member hit the early soft lines. Well done. OG has been killing the bets, man. I don't know if the guy can just interpret everything we're saying and putting out there and pick the perfect stuff, but that dude is cashing in and printing money, and hat tip to you, sir. Love it. I wasn't surprised by Heim. Zane Smith did try to make that charge at the end, was going to kind of make it interesting. We had suggested Zane Smith would be a factor. Pitch strategy did come into play. That race had, as far as old school racing, it had everything we wanted. Nick Sanchez fought his way from the back. That was fantastic. We pushed Caden Honeycutt. He had a nice showing. Daniel Dye finally got a finish to go along with the speed and the practice and the qualifying he's done. Overall, I enjoyed the truck race. I was very happy to see Corey Heim win. And I tell you what, Sean, with some of the silly season news, I won't be shocked to hear that Corey Haim's going to be in a ride very soon in Cup.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't shock me 100% either. Whether it's even another year in trucks, which I don't think will happen, especially if he's already getting Cup experience at this point, or Xfinity, which can also happen if there's no available seats. I could see him shifting up to Xfinity as well for a year. But it's not out of the question that he could just jump into Cup right there too, especially when you look at his stat line, especially in trucks. I believe this weekend I saw on NASCAR social media, they were saying that this is his 50th truck start. And within his whole career, you know how many times he's finished inside the top 10 that they put on the graphic there, Rich?
I know he's 100% this year, and I want to say he was almost 100% last year, even if you counted the race he missed against him for being sick. He was so good last year. He won the points title while having one less race than everybody else and had it locked up with 2 races to go. I don't know the number off the top of my head, Sean, but I got to believe it's got to be somewhere around 90-95% of his finishes inside the top 10.
He has 37 top 10 finishes throughout his whole truck career after almost 50 starts. 37.
Well, I'm a math geek, so let me see this here. Let's assume it is 50, which I could pull it up. That's 74%, man. That is 74% of his truck races are top 10 finishes. That's insane, man.
That is like, what do you call it? Like some of the most dominant drivers in Cup of their time would have numbers like that within just a few seasons there. And Haim is already doing it at such an early level with the trucks. It's really insane. You know what they say? It really is Haim time. And he just continues to hammer that down each and every week.
The thing is, when it comes to Corey Haim, he's been with Ty Gibbs this whole time coming up. And you and I have talked about it, that I'm longing for the Haim Ty Gibbs kind of hero villain thing, although Ty Gibbs is kind of the villain at this point. I want to see these two competing against each other. And so I understand why Gibbs is ahead of him on the trajectory so far, but in my opinion, I don't think he's any more deserving of where he's at than Mr. Corey Haim is.
Yeah, Haim, I think, is definitely going to find his way to Cup within these next few years. You can definitely really see it. I mean, Toyota is going to bill him as pretty much their top prospect at this point. He's just not in Xfinity, so he may not get as much of the attention as, say, like Chandler Smith has, who's also having a really great season in Xfinity as well so far. Something to keep in mind there.
Both of them came through that Toyota camp of young drivers, too.
That is for sure, for sure. But also, when you look back towards the Truck Series race, you still had a few other standout finishers. Brett Moffitt, in his first start with Tricon Garage, finished 5th. Tanner Gray ended up finishing in the 7th position. Dean Thompson, 8th. Bailey Curry almost got a top 10 finish. He was just one position shy there, Rich.
Yeah, and I apologize on the Brett Moffitt take. I mentioned him in the article. I did not push him in the article. I wasn't sure what to do with his first race back after so long. He has been, when he was in the Truck Series, he was dominating the Truck Series. And the fact that he's getting rides in this number 1 team, and look, the number 1 team is a part of Tricon, but all the other Tricon trucks have run historically better this year, pretty much everywhere. So I was only lukewarm, but going forward, look, Brett Moffitt's going to be a staple for our approach for DFS and betting. I will not be shocked to see Brett Moffitt win a race yet this year, and even only the handful of races he's running in that number 1 car.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider that your teammates are the Gray brothers and Corey Haim, I mean, you should expect speed out of that one truck, especially with just the information going around.
And we haven't seen it. We really had. And I think that's a testament of them trying some young drivers and giving people opportunities and understanding that no matter how good the truck is, you need the driver. No matter how good the driver is, you need the equipment. Look, I tell you what, they really could have. If Tricon wanted to, they could go full-time with Moffitt next year. Probably both the Gray brothers again. I mean, you could make the argument that maybe they've got some other talent to throw in there over Tanner. And you got to find a replacement for Haim, obviously, if we're assuming he moves on. But I tell you what, I will not be shocked if this time next year we're talking about Brett Moffitt being a favorite to win a championship in the Truck Series.
Yeah, as long as he can lock up a ride, that is. That's the most important thing. He has the talent. There's no question about it. It's just a matter of if he can get enough sponsorship to be behind him in order to justify running a whole season.
And, if the team's getting sponsorship for these other drivers, I got to believe they can. I think part of Moffitt's problem was he wanted to step up, right? We know he wanted to run some Cup. He wanted, and it just wasn't a good fit. And the sponsorship at the Cup level is a whole different animal than what we see here at the truck level. And I mean, costs come into that and all that sort of thing. But I just have this suspicion that Moffitt might be, you and I've talked about it. When the truck series was really the creme of the creme, it was half young guys that were unproven coming up through ARCA and half of a bunch of old farts that used to run Cup and Xfinity that were just, wanted to race still and still had that skill. The Ron Horder days, the Ted Musgraves, that sort of thing. It was a fantastic mix. I would love to get back to that point.
And who knows? Maybe we could eventually see that too if some more of these drivers start going down towards these lower series. Something to keep in mind. But you know what, though? Let's actually go forth and recap the Cup Series race. And I think the Cup Series race now was one of the best races of the year, and it did make some history, as we know there, Rich.
I don't disagree. The race had a lot going on. I mean, we had strategy come into play because of how some of the cautions fell. I got to tell you, I was very frustrated with 10 laps to go, my friend. Very, very frustrated. But it ended up leading us to craziest finish we've ever seen in NASCAR history, at least. I mean, this definitely rivals. Up until this time, I would have not put even the Atlanta finish, none of these other finishes I would have put on par with Darlington in March of 2003 between Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven. That was that I know a lot of people say, oh, the race was boring that day. That race was an excellent Darlington race. Strategy was coming into it. There was forward and backwards. It was playing out. Darlington races tend to do that sort of thing. As an old school guy, I'm good with it. I like seeing strategy. I like seeing the story play out. I don't like the stage cautions and it changing strategy. I like teams taking chances early on, having to see it play out. And we saw that. Hamlin had a lead, and he was having to save fuel. Truex had all the gas he wanted, and he was running him down. And we were about to see it all play out in front of our eyes. Boom, Kyle Busch, the love-hate relationship he has with Kansas. We talked about it last week. Yep. He actually ran well and spun. Normally it's not both, but he ran well and spun. Reset the field. Truex takes 4 tires, goes all the way back to 11th. Hamlin, we knew wasn't good on the short runs. They were already trying to save fuel and had to deal with a splash and go. So it changed everything. And then, Sean, take us through the finish, man.
So overall, there was the overtime restart there. Basically, what happened was as Hamlin tried to lead the field to green, he tried holding everybody off. He just couldn't. Chris Buescher ended up going by him for the lead and was just holding strong at the front overall, and even took the white flag ahead of him just because he was also air blocking Kyle Larson, who was charging through the field there too. He just had that good of a car in order to do that. And really, Buescher, he kept ahead through turns 1 and 2, but really it was 3 and 4 where he made the difference, because after Larson made a run, he had himself a bit momentum coming out of 2. He went towards 3 and 4. Buescher left just enough room where Larson could get up to the top. He was able to use that momentum. They start slamming each other towards the line, and it just ended up being oh so close to call. Oh, so close.
They're still debating if the start-finish line was level. They're debating the transponders, which it's funny to me because NASCAR had to admit, the transponders were misreading a little bit. And I was like, oh, but the transponders is where you get your passing numbers from. Just throwing that out there. I was salty, Sean. I had a 5-1 ticket on Hamlin and a 10-1 ticket on Truex. So with 9 laps to go, I was loving life because I'm like, this is happened to me at Charlotte a few years ago at the Roval. Like, I got first and second. Laps are winding down. It's going to be one of these two guys. And then chaos. Same thing happened to me at the Roval. I had first and second. Hey, something's going to happen here. Well, Jimmy Johnson was in second. He wrecked the leader, took himself out, and the third-place car won. So, my bad beats with NASCAR can't seem to end, going back to Brad Keselowski at Talladega. But I tell you what, for the story finish we got, and really, hat tip to Truex. I was like, you're crazy for taking those 4 tires. He almost made it work. I would argue, had he got clear when they were 3 wide, on the end of that first lap coming out of 3 or 4, if he had gotten clear of that group and got back up to the top side of the track, he was going to be there with Larson and Buescher coming around to turn 4 at the end of the race.
Well, not to mention, he was also dealing with Chase Elliott in turns 3 and 4, too, and that also slowed him down from there, too.
Yeah, it was 3 wide for a whole lap for those guys. And Chase, they're at the very end. I mean, you saw Chase and Truex on the shot. I mean, they were right there. And, I thought it was funny because we talked about Elliott, and Mark had asked us last week, where's the Elliott, love kind of coming from? It's trending in the right direction, folks. Elliott, 2 years ago, Elliott was a staple of the conversation. Kind of everyone thought he's washed up, can't do it. He got hurt, something. Elliott's back in the forefront. It's going to be a topic going forward here for the next few weeks for sure.
Especially when you just look at all the finishes that Elliott has had this season, he actually now has the second best average finish of all the drivers that have ran every race this year. And only one driver is better, and that's the driver he was racing across the line there, Martin Truex there.
It's insane. And over the last 5 races, maybe it's 6 now, the only non-top 5 finish he has was the 14th place finish at Dega. You and I throw Dega out, right? So we throw Dega out. The dude's on a hot streak of top 5 finishes.
They're all top 5 finishes other than that 15th place finish at Talladega.
Yeah.
Within the last 6 races, all top 5s.
It's insane. Insane. So he'll be on he was one of our standout finishers, along with Chris Buescher, of course. Christopher Bell, he needed a bounce back week at 6. He's someone to keep in mind. We'll get into a little bit later today. Alex Bowman needed a little bit better finish, 7th. Kyle Busch, who really was on his way to a top 5 before he spun, somehow managed, which is interesting because we saw other drivers spin and they had to wait for the tow truck.
Yeah.
So, which don't even get me going on that. Kyle Busch came back 8th. Noah Gragson 9th. Michael McDowell had a nice finish in 10th. John Hunter Nemechek bounced back a little bit in 13th. Todd Gilliland had a nice run in 14th. It was nice to see that team run well. Josh Berry in 15th, and Justin Haley just keeps quietly rattling off top 20 and top 15s as kind of surprise runs. I really wish that cat would have gotten in some better equipment. I'm still upset Kaulig let him go, but I digress.
Yeah, Kaulig, the whole thing with them and sponsorship and needing drivers that bring sponsorship, and that's ultimately why they just weren't sure about keeping Haley. And then Haley was like, if you guys aren't going to keep me for multiple years, I'm going to Rick Ware. And that's exactly what happened. But really, Haley, we know he's a talented driver that can get the most out of his equipment. Just if the equipment is there, he's going to have some promising results. He end up scoring positive place differential at a lot of these different sorts of tracks. Doesn't matter what type of track it is, he just finds a way in order to move through the field, little bit by bit.
And his teammate does the same thing. And it's shocking because you and I talked about this before, especially in Discord. We've never been Rick Ware racing fan. It's not like we don't want them to do well. It's just they've historically been so underfunded. They've been historically backmarkers, equipment that's never held up. And as much as I dog this new car, this is exactly where the new car is supposed to help, and it has been helping, right? Trackhouse was able to, start on fire right off the bat. Rick Ware Racing, I wouldn't say they're top competitors, but man, they're having more top 20, top 15 finishes than I think they've had probably accumulate over decades, right? Kaulig Racing. Yeah, exactly. Kaulig and Spire, both of them are definitely running better than we ever gave them credit for in the past, So a hat tip in that regard. But, man, I would love to see Haley be with I tell you what, give me Haley over Alex Bowman, for example. I would love to see Haley in that 48. It'll never happen. But I would love to see Alex Bowman's a much more calculated driver. Haley is a much more kamikaze driver, in my opinion. I would love to see that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, mentality, if you will, in that 48 car and see what he could do.
Well, what would you think if he ended up going to an RFK-based car, though, Rich?
I would be okay with that because his personality fits in well with Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski. They are both kind of more kamikaze, but they take care of their equipment. They're a student of the game. They understand the sport as a whole. I tell you what, I would like to see Justin Haley because that is a team that I think is on the rise. And again, Roush used to be a top-tier team. You want to go back 30 years. Hendrick wasn't even considered what they are today. Roush, Robert Yates, they were kind of the class of the field for the Fords. They battled a lot. And you had RCR. That was really the creme of the crop out there. And unfortunately, RCR and RFK is kind of now taking a step back, starting to improve again. I would love to see Haley at Art. Don't tease me like that, Sean. You're going to get me excited.
Well, I only bring that up because, if it wasn't for Brad Keselowski himself, Haley would not even be at Rick Ware right now.
I did not know this. Share.
Just because pretty much now that Rick Ware Racing, they have that technical alliance with RFK, and as a part of that alliance, they were looking for a new full-time driver at the 51 because of the whole Cody Ware business and everything like that. So then Brad K, he was looking at the talent that was out there. He thought of Justin Haley. Then he got Haley out there in a meeting with the RFK team, and then boom, as you know, they're now together. They're racing.
Interesting. Well, I don't know that they added charter, but there's a lot of charter talk that we'll get into later. And look, I know a lot of people don't like Brad. I know a lot of people don't like Denny. I like both of them. They're Kyle Busch too. I don't mind personalities that are abrasive. I don't mind speaking freely. I don't want vanilla. People forget Dale Earnhardt Sr. was hated, right? And he spoke his mind and called it like he sees it. And I very much see that with Kyle Busch. I like what Denny does with his podcast, and I love what Brad's been doing as an owner. So, look, as much as people want to dog these guys, if you're a fan of the sport, we need these guys around. These three, Kevin Harvick, these are the types that are going to keep this sport going and keep us connected. Without them, we're not going to have anything. Without the personalities, NASCAR's had nothing. We have always had villains and heroes in NASCAR. We need the personalities. If anything, sponsorship killed that over the early 2000s. We need to bring it back. I would love to see Haley with RFK. I'd like to see RFK, taking steps forward. So, man, it would have been cool to see Buescher pull that off. But, hey, Larson's going to give you – it's checkers or wreckers for that man, and always has been. So, you better bring your A game. Like Denny Hamlin said, it's tough to race a guy that is willing to wreck to win.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But back onto the Buescher narrative for a second there. It only just continues a whole heartbreaking 2024 for Ford.
Yes,
they still have not even won a race in any of the 3 series this year. This has been the longest they've gone for a while without winning a race in any of the 3.
They're behind in the Cup car. They've been behind in the Cup car. They have pretty much ignored Xfinity and Truck for quite a while. I mean, as far as support and everything else, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what's going on with Ford Racing's program. I don't know if they've decided to scale back with some of the other challenges. I'm kind of shocked because I know Jim Farley's a race fan and he's the CEO at Ford. But the new car for Ford, I can't come soon enough next year. I definitely think that. Joey's even talked about Kansas was one of the better tracks of this car that they've had for Ford. And unfortunately, he thought this was maybe some of the better chances they've had. But I mean, Team Penske has not been impressive this year at all in any way, shape, or form. So
nope.
Ford's got a problem, man, because right now it's Chevy and Toyota, and Ford's an afterthought. Ford's like Dodge was 15, 20 years ago.
Well, you know what, though, Rich? How about we use this as a segue to transition from one driver that's leaving a Ford team going to a Chevy team with a big silly season bombshell. Michael McDowell is leaving Front Row Motorsports after this year to join Spire Motorsports in the number 71 car. Woo-wee! Silly season has begun there, Rich.
It has, and we got a lot of silly season to touch on, and we're just getting to the start of silly season. It's about to get crazier. I did not see this coming, but someone did remind me that Zane Smith was only on loan from Trackhouse. So this made a lot more sense in that regard. My concern is, I guess it's not a concern, but what does this mean for SVG? Are we seeing Trackhouse potentially try to get 2 more charters and go to a 4-car team? Does this mean that SVG is in another year away from a developmental standpoint? There's some more questions that go with this in Trackhouse now because obviously Zane Smith's out of a ride. The assumption is he's going to Trackhouse, but right now, unless Daniel Suarez leaves, we don't have a ride for him at Trackhouse.
Yeah, pretty much as it is with SVG. I think ultimately this is just going to come down to if Trackhouse can get enough charters in time. with the fact that there's this news happening, it makes me think they've at least got one in mind that they're already locking up just for Zane Smith, since a lot of the reports and rumors are saying that he already is going to be tabbed for a Trackhouse ride in Cup next year. Bob Pockrass of Fox Sports has been noting a few of these rumors as such. So it's just a matter, we don't know where the charters are coming from, how the charters are getting bought out, and what's happening with as far as that's concerned. Nothing has been made public just past the news that McDowell's leaving Front Row and joining Spire in that 71 car.
If I was Daniel Suarez, I'd be sweating, hoping I had some sponsorship lined up so I had some confidence that I was returning. I think he deserves to return. I'm not trying to dog the young man. But, look, these are dominoes, right? We've had one domino fall that's, creating another domino to fall. And what's that mean? Who's going to replace McDowell in the 34? Because Front Row, honestly, they've been running better than Penske, and their alliance is with Penske. So I find that kind of interesting in of itself, right? But who is going to the 34 now, right? Are we going to see a change with the 21? Because Harrison Burton has not been performing for Wood Brothers, and he has brought that sponsorship. But at what point do we see them want to make a change because the performance isn't there? Because Penske's not having the performance, to be fair to Harrison Burton. But the Front Row team has been showing speed at multiple times in both the 34 and 38 cars. So, there's a lot to be figured out here. And checks notes, it's only mid-May, Sean. Usually we don't get the heart of silly season until June, July. It started early this year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you bring up some good points. Notice these are all Ford teams we're talking about here, Rich. Something that to also keep in mind of, just because there's one other Ford team that we haven't really talked about so far or mentioned yet. That's going to be the real big sticking point, and that's Stewart-Haas Racing. And that's just because we know there's been countless rumors, countless all sorts of people talking and speculating about what's going to happen with Stewart-Haas at the end of the season because their deal with Ford is up. We don't know if they're going to renew with Ford. We don't know if the team itself is even going to exist after next year because there's been talk about the fact that they might end up selling the whole team or closing it out. Or there's also been rumors that, heck, even Stewart-Haas, maybe the Haas portion, maybe Tony might drop out of NASCAR and the Haas portion could maybe merge with something like Front Row Motorsports and become a 4-car team that way. Wouldn't that be something, Rich?
Well, there's a lot to figure out. I mean, there is so much to figure out with this because the Stewart-Haas thing could be anywhere from nothing changes. Could be 4 cars come back with charters, but they're not with Ford anymore. That's a possibility. Mm-hmm. We have the whole team sells to somebody. That's a possibility. We have all 4 charters get sold to somebody and the team completely dissolves. Because we saw Ganassi sell outright to Trackhouse. So, that can't rule that out. We could see just 2 charters going away. Like, there is a lot to figure out here. And without having Stewart-Haas linked to Ford beyond this year, there's a lot of questions. And quite frankly, we talk about in football, follow the actions, not the words, right? Well, here's the deal. The actions, there's no contract with Ford after this year. There may be contract with drivers, but we have no idea contracts with sponsors, to be quite frank. And we know multiple teams are looking to expand. So beyond that, there's a whole lot of questions going on. And you said it best. Silly season's going to be real chunked up here. But once the Stewart-Haas news becomes official on whatever that news is, then we're going to see just a whole bunch of dominoes falling after that.
Yeah, especially because I've been hearing some speculation and some rumors about where some of the drivers might end up too. Apparently, one rumor that I've heard that may have gotten a little bit of talk online is the fact that maybe the driver of the 34 might end up being Cole Custer, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's dominating Xfinity again. And, in my opinion, we talked about the truck, the old guys. I liked when Xfinity had that, right? The Sam R days. And, Mark Martin used to go down there and beat everybody up all the time. He was driving Cup then. But, Cole Custer was quite the disappointment at Stewart-Haas. But looking back now, there's been a lot of disappointing stuff at Stewart-Haas. How much did Rodney Childers and Kevin Harvick just carry that whole organization? And how much did Eric Almirola Notes really help that organization? Because when he got there, it did help. And he's not a dumb driver. He may not be the most successful or the most talented that we've seen on the circuit, but he's no slouch. We saw him coming up with a lot of hoopla, so to speak, through the Xfinity series. That's very interesting to hear that about Cole Custer, because I had not heard that. But he's currently in a Ford camp, and we know these manufacturers sign these drivers. Like that is a thing. When Kyle Busch shut down, he had one driver. The rest of his drivers on that team were Toyota drivers. So,
yeah.
I had not seen that. It's very interesting.
There's a few other rumors I'll share with you real quick here, Rich. There's rumors that Front Row might expand to a 3-car team and might also consider bringing one of the SHR drivers, either Josh Berry or maybe even consider bringing Riley Herbst in as well. And as for the Wood Brothers rumors, there's a lot of talk that they might likely be getting rid of Harrison Burton at the end of the year. And if Ryan Preece ends up going from Stewart Haas, he might be one of the favorites in order to land the 21 next year.
So why haven't we heard about Noah Gragson? Because I would argue of all the Stewart Haas drivers, he's the one that's impressing me the most. And people forget that 2 years ago, he destroyed everybody in Xfinity. So I don't understand. And I saw the thing you shared with me about the data, or somebody shared in Discord about the data sharing that Noah's being like, the dude's trying to be a better student of the game and really trying to do some good things. And yet all I keep hearing is this poor guy's out of a ride.
Well, just as much as I've heard the Riley Herbst to a 3rd Front Row car talk there too, I've also heard Noah Gragson in that same position as well. We don't know for sure. It's just there's a bunch of drivers going around, and there's some rumored spots that are just being talked about. And this is just talk I've seen online all throughout social media and stuff like that.
I wish I was a sports agent, because I would go get Noah as a client, and I would be pounding on Rick Hendrick's door to let me get this kid in a ride. He's rough around the edges. We'll work with him. Get him in a ride, man.
And then there's Chase Briscoe, who really, this whole thing depends on if they're staying with Ford or if Stewart Haas is going to close. Where does he go? I mean, some people have talked about maybe if RFK gets a 3rd charter, maybe he might go there too.
You know where Briscoe would be a good fit, honestly? RCR.
That would be an interesting call, but the question is that we don't know how much his contract is attached with Ford, the manufacturer itself. That's the real question that we don't know.
This is an ongoing problem. And see, this what people forget with Kyle Busch is the Gibbs Toyota thing were both expiring. Toyota was pushing the negotiations to try, because they didn't want to lose Busch, right? They didn't want to lose his team. They didn't want to lose him. But the fact of the matter is there was no money. There was no way to do it. And they had to move on. Chevy ended up the winner in the deal, if you ask me. Spire ended up the winner in the deal, if you ask me. We're still not to Kyle Busch trucks, racing level yet with Spire, but they're trending that direction, right?
Yeah.
They're getting the better equipment. And no, Kyle Busch isn't in quite the same level of equipment he has been. But here again, RCR showing speed all of a sudden the last couple of weeks. A little bit shockingly, and I got to believe a lot of that. I think the Austin Dillon crew chief change helps that a little bit, but I think it's driven a lot by Kyle Busch. Yeah,
that is for sure. This is overall something that we're going to have to just pay attention to over the coming months, but it leaves for a lot of interesting discussion. Heck, we could even have way more discussion on just this news story alone, but we're not going to be able to cover it within the length of this show. So let's just quickly go over the next 2 headlines here. I'm just going to go rapid fire with this. So first things first, we have Thor Sport switching crew chiefs with Ben Rhodes and Jake Garcia starting this week at Darlington there. Quick synopsis there, Rich?
I think it's a big deal. Jake Garcia has shown more speed the last few races than Ben Rhodes has. I did not see this initially. Ben Rhodes is going to be on my radar a little bit more this weekend. He's been good. He's young. He just won the championship. This is a needle mover for me.
Yeah, especially considering that I believe that his crew chief that was the crew chief for Jake Garcia that he's now getting, they have history together, I believe, too. Okay. So as for the next story here, we got Carson Kvapil getting confirmed for 6 more races in the number 88 JRM Chevy for Xfinity.
Smart.
And that starts with this week's race at Darlington. Carson Kvapil, he's also going to race in New Hampshire, Indianapolis, Michigan, Darlington again, and Talladega in the fall. So this is a real interesting move, especially we saw over at Dover how Carson, he nearly won that race there, Rich.
Top 5 at Bristol, never been in an Xfinity car. Top 2, 3, almost won at Dover. Those tracks are similar. They're a little more short tracky, right? High banks, high speed, short distances. Really curious to see how he runs. Look, we've said it. That 88 car has been fast no matter who's been in it. Bubba Pollard looked fantastic at Richmond. Junior looked good last year in it at Bristol Fall. But I tell you what, I am shocked. It's been a long time. Jesse Love kind of did. But outside Jesse Love, we don't see too many people completely skip trucks and go to Xfinity. And it sure looks like that's the path Carson Kvapil's on. And I'm excited for this young man. I really am. You know, any of these younger guys who, you know, Lane Riggs, these guys whose dads were in the sport and had success enough to get to the cup level, if they drive with that chip and edge like we've seen from Kvapil and from Lane Riggs, I think the future's bright for both of them. So this is also a big needle mover for me. I'm really curious to watch Carson this weekend.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be very interesting, especially to see those JRM cars. They've been real fast, as you know. And you know what else is fast there, Rich? What else do I usually say that's really fast?
I don't know. Now I'm lost, man. I'm stuck on the 88 car.
Paint schemes, man. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, you're right. You like fast-looking paint schemes. My bad. That is definitely the – and holy crap, do we have some paint schemes this week, bro.
Yeah, let's get right on into it. As we know, it's Throwback weekend, so there's going to be a lot of nods and references towards a lot of paint schemes driven in motorsports. NASCAR usually, yes, in the past, but some other motorsports get some nods too there, Rich. Let's get started. Give us one.
Dude, you and I overlapping so much. So here's the deal. We're going to save the best for last because the sexiest one of them all, we're in agreement on. We're going to save that for last. But I tell you what, let's throw out Mr. Brad Keselowski. I didn't realize you would be as happy about that one as I was. But this is well done.
Oh, I love this scheme for so many reasons. Just because the Castrol colors, they look freaking-tastic on this car. And also, the fact of the matter is, it also gets me nostalgic, too, because the Tom's Toyota Super GT, that was a car I ended up using a lot back in the day when I used to play the Gran Turismo games in particular.
Okay.
So I already have memories with that car there too. And to see the paint scheme recreated so well on Brad's car this week, it's just tugging at me, man. It looks amazing.
I dig it. I really do. It's a sexy one, man. I can't lie.
Yeah, it's not a NASCAR-based scheme, but still, it looks like it could be like just the regular every week Castrol scheme. It would still be really great. It just looks that good, man.
It does, and it matches that supercar there perfectly, the Supra GT.
So let's continue and get the train still rolling here. Rich, we're gonna go forth and put on William Byron's Firestorm scheme, the throwback to Jeff Gordon there from his 2009 to about 2010 or 11 days there. Really big fan of this scheme there. I know I'm a little bit biased as a Jeff Gordon fan, but really, it's really cool to see the scheme just back again because it's not a scheme that people talk about as much with Jeff Gordon.
No, because he made his name at the Rainbow Warrior one, and we never see it. And I think he ran the Flames for such a long time, and we've seen other plays on the Flames, even for William Byron and even later on in Jeff's career. This was my favorite Flame one they did. I'm with you. I love this paint scheme. I really do. I loved it when Jeff ran it. You want to talk about a car that looks fast? This looks fast. Flames can be overdone and everything, but I've always felt like they did a decent job with this paint scheme. I like the yellow, orange, red fade together, and you kind of do it with the Flames. It's kind of some of the fun stuff I do on my video games when I do some Flames like this. I'm with you, man. I'm a Jeff Gordon fan, so you're not going to get any hate from me, bro.
Yeah, we know it at Hendrick Motorsports. They absolutely killed it with the paint schemes this week. So let's get into another one here with Alex Bowman's Allies paint scheme here, which is a tribute towards Jimmy Johnson's Lowe's paint scheme from 2002 all the way to 2004.
The side view on the NASCAR webpage, you would swore it said Lowe's and it was Jimmy Johnson. Like, even as big as Ally is on there, you instantly went, that's Jimmy Johnson's car. I mean, this is a spitting image with hat tip for Ally for going with the same colors and everything. They don't have to do that. A lot of sponsors don't like to do that. They did an excellent job with this, man. And you're not wrong. Hendrick absolutely killed the paint schemes this week.
For sure, for sure. And we'll get into another one of those pretty soon ourselves. But let's go on and move on to another one here. Let's go with a paint scheme that wasn't exactly a NASCAR paint scheme, but is still a throwback all the same. Daniel Suarez's Quaker State paint scheme, which is a tribute and throwback towards Adrian Fernandez's open wheel scheme there.
So as a guy that went to many, many Indy 500s over the years, that paint scheme jumped out to me right off the bat because that's exactly what it reminded me of was Fernandez's car there at the Indy 500. And it's spot on.
They did such a great job at Trackhouse just translating a whole open wheel paint scheme, which we know some of the open wheel paint schemes from IndyCar don't always translate well to NASCAR. I think they really did a beyond great job with this one. It looks fast, it looks accurate, and even the number font. I love it.
Yep. I'm with you, man. They did an excellent job.
Yes. So let's get into another one here. Another paint scheme that's really, really old. How about we talk about this paint scheme you chose here, which is the Kaz Grala Parnelli Jones paint scheme here.
So I looked this one up, and this goes way back. In fact, it was at a road race the photo was, and they said it's not Riverside, but we don't know what road race it is, and it's not our photo. But this looks like the old school race cars, the Parnelli Jones. This was the Boss 302 Mustang. It's a spitting image, man. And I love the circle with the 15. Like it takes me back to like playing with Matchbox cars as a kid at my grandparents' house, looking at old, programs from old races. Like this one just hits me in the feels.
Man, it really is good. My only one tiny little gripe with this is that I wish NASCAR didn't force the teams to put the forward numbers, because this is one of those cases where if the number was right in the middle, I would just love it even more.
Yeah, it would fit better. You know what I mean? It really would.
What a missed opportunity with that. But other than that, I really like this choice as well there, Rich. So let's go forth, and I'm going to give some love over to the lower series here and say that Xfinity series really had some great-looking throwbacks. And this probably was my favorite one of them here. The Brennan
man.
one.
That is fantastic.
Yes.
That is an old Kyle Petty. I remember watching that Kyle Petty car, man.
Yeah, the Hot Wheels car from about 1997. So I get nostalgic about this because I also had like a dice cast of this as a kid too. This was one of the very first cars I ever actually owned as a die cast that way back in the day. So it's really special to me. And just overall to see them recreate this with the detail that they've done it there too, and the sponsor font and everything, the number is just perfect. Oh my gosh, this is done so well. Hat tip to Alpha Prime.
Yes, because this rivals Hendrick, dude. This rivals what Hendrick did. I mean, you threw up this picture, and my memory instantly went to Kyle Petty Hot Wheels.
Exactly.
Like it just did.
Now, I'm also going to give some love here to this Truck Series paint scheme, which also came out pretty recently too. But this one is really, really incredible too, and probably my favorite of the truck throwbacks. And that's Stuart Friesen's number 52 car, which is a tribute towards Jimmy Johnson's Coke 600 scheme from 2010. Look at this thing, Rich. Look at it.
It does look a lot like Jimmy's paint scheme from that year, man. I was at that race. That does look like a spitting image. Wow.
They even matched the number font.
I would say they did. They did a good job.
Man, it looks so good.
You know, I feel bad because there's one I didn't tell you to pull the package or the photo on, but it deserves a hat tip as well. And that's Chase Elliott.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We know he's doing the Dale Earnhardt Jr. throwback towards his 2014 National Guard paint scheme. We actually mentioned about that during one of the previous podcast episodes when it was first unveiled. So that was really cool paint scheme just to throw there, too. Now, let's get into the paint scheme that we both thought. I just put a category on our show rundown where it was both of us. Let's just
look, it's draft season. It's 101 of paint schemes. This is the 101 of paint schemes right here, at least for this weekend.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This paint scheme here, Kyle Larson's HendrickCars.com throwback towards Terry Labonte's 90s Kellogg scheme. Look at this thing. It's beautiful.
Dude, they even got the font for Hendrick to match the Kellogg font, man. I mean, that's what's so trippy is the H in Hendrick almost looks like the K in Kellogg's. And then the way they spaced it, the color, like you have no idea this is a Hendrick car if you're from that generation and remember this car. I mean, I would love to get this die cast. I don't collect a bunch of die casts, but this is a die cast I would love to get. And the funny thing is, it's the same number, right? Because Kyle Larson drives for the same team and number. So, I mean, it's even the same number in everything. This is just insane.
Yeah, and what's absolutely crazy is we mentioned about the whole number placement with Kaz Gralla before. This is, I think, the opposite case where I think the number moving forward actually makes it work even better than originally intended. So,
well, because Hendrick's a longer word than Kellogg's, right? So being able to put all that on there at the right size and font and still, and look, they did that big slant. So even that 5's kind of pushed back a little bit. Sean, you're not wrong, man. This was the number works out perfect.
Man. Chef's kiss. Now, what I'm going to do is there's a bunch of other paint schemes that I want to quickly just shout out and throw back. We're going to go through this montage style here real quick. So these are from lower series, Rich. I'm not sure if you've seen all of these, so let's go through it. First, I have Brandon Jones throwback in the Xfinity series here.
That's a junior car.
Yeah. Towards his Hellman scheme from 2018. So it looks really cool. Next, we have Chad Fincham in the Xfinity Series driving the 35, throwing back to Kevin Harvick here.
Perfect. Damn.
Back towards his 2001 Childress scheme with the GM car. So there you go. Next, we have Cole Custer throwing it back to Johnny Sauter with this Haas scheme representing his old yellow paint scheme from the 2006. Really cool stuff there, too. Next, we have a truck one here of Christian Eckes throwing it back to Brownie King.
That's classic. That's an old classic there, man, where they still put the horsepower on the hood. That's awesome.
Yeah. Then we have Daniel Dye with his paint scheme throwback towards Kyle Petty with the Peak scheme.
I love this. This one was really well done.
Oh, yes. It looks very accurate towards the original scheme, too. And they maintained the original sponsor, which is really cool, too.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often.
Next, we have Jack Wood with his throwback towards Tim Flock.
And Flock, Flock's got his monkey with him, man. Jocko
there
Flocko.
You go. Oh, man, it looks so good. Anyway, going forth towards another Xfinity-based one, we have Justin Allgaier with a Brandt logo throwback here. So the old school Brandt labeling and everything there is really cool. Next up, we have another Xfinity one, this time of another very classic paint scheme, Parker Retzlaff throwing it back towards Harry Gant here.
Oh, say that's the Skull Bandit, bro.
Yeah. This one's really cool, especially because they also got Harry Gant himself in order to be in the room with the paint scheme and see both the original car and this one side by side, too. So, really cool thing.
High, wide, and handsome Harry Gant.
Yeah. Two more here. We got ourselves the other Alpha Prime throwback this weekend with Ryan Ellis throwing it back to Days of Thunder.
This is awesome.
Classic collision there. Cole Trickle.
Oh, I didn't know this one. I've been all over this. Damn.
And then this last one is Shane Van Gisbergen with his throwback towards fellow Supercars driver Marcus Ambrose here.
Oh, that looks just like it. Get rid of the 7, and that would be identical, man.
Yeah, the same font as the whole Earnhardt Evernham days.
Yep.
And that's all we got for today. So let's just go forth and keep it moving here. Let's talk about this week's race here, Rich. Previewing Darlington.
So the big things for Darlington we got to take away: dominators. Going through all 3 series, it is not uncommon to have only 4 or 5 lap leaders, with 2 or 3 leading the vast majority of laps. In the truck series, we literally have only had 4 or 5 the last couple of years, with 2 trucks dominating. You have a handful more in the Cup Series, but largely almost all the laps are led by about 3 drivers. Unfortunately, they haven't always finished well, as Denny Hamlin noted last year, but we're going to want the dominators. Look, track pit strategy and stuff, it's going to be tough. We're not going to be able to predict it all, Sean, and I think that's what bit some of the Toyota teams last year, if I recall correctly. Pit strategy, tire wear, fuel mileage, these are all going to be significant factors this weekend.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that should just factor into our strategy, though, too. This is the sort of track where ultimately I like having myself a good dominator or 2, because Darlington is also one of the trickier tracks in order to pass in the Cup Series schedule overall, and we've seen it in recent races where we've seen a driver or 2 just run away with it for a little while there, too, especially when we consider Darlington doesn't have many passing lanes overall.
No, and a perfect example of that is I've never noticed this. It's not a pattern that I've picked up before, but the top 5 in average finish are right around, say, 9 to 10, 11, 12 in that range, okay? All of those drivers, except for Eric Jones, their average starting position is within 1 place or less of their average finishing position. I've never really seen that at any other track we go to, Sean.
Absolutely crazy to think, but when we have to think about this in terms of DFS there, Rich. Those are the sorts of drivers that you may want to consider for lineups, would you say?
I would, especially dominator side, right? I mean, if Hamlin, Larson, Reddick, Jones was the 5th one. I'm forgetting. Kyle Busch. Was it Kyle Busch? I'm forgetting. It's in the article. The article will be posted shortly. I don't have it handy in front of me. I apologize. But there's a group of 5 right there. Yes, they qualify up front. Oh, Truex. No, Truex was further down. He was also in the same boat, though. He had an average finish within 1 spot of where he started. But, yes, we know if they're going to start well, they're probably going to finish well, right? I guess is what I'm taking away when I see something like that. That is not very common, and that's going to help us with our dominators. Obviously, anybody we think can move forward, like you've noted in the past, we want to target, but this is a tough track to pass on. Strategy, taking care of equipment is a big deal here. So passing and pit road's going to be a big thing. What passing we do see on the track is going to be a big deal. And you know it as well as I do. Air blocking at the front is crucial. So whoever's leading out front, if they get stuck back in traffic, it's going to be a problem.
Oh, for sure. But really, though, we also have to keep in mind of the whole GPP aspect, too, with some of these drivers. Say, for example, we get some of those mid-tier or lower-priced drivers starting towards the front. I think depending on the circumstances and equipment, you may want to consider just rostering some of these drivers into lineups as it is there too, especially when you consider the pricing of some of these drivers. You can be like, is he really supposed to be priced that low? Or is he really supposed to be priced that high? It's just something you have to think about with all the drivers in the field.
There's a couple of drivers like Chris Buescher that feels way underpriced, for example, right? Eric Jones, I know he's coming back from injury, but considering his track history, and I get the team has been kind of, they have equipment to last. Eric Jones does well here because he manages equipment well. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think he's criminally underpriced as an example. A lot more risk because we haven't seen him race, and I don't know if the injury is going to be in the back of his mind, but I'm with you. Caden Honeycutt, for example, paid off for us in the truck series last week that way, right? He started near the front, and he did drop back a couple of times, but that 4th place finish was crucial because he was not high owned across most of the slates. So if we're willing to be bold and take those guys, I'm with you, because it is going to be tough to pass. We will see some of it, but this is a notoriously tough track on equipment, on drivers, on crew chiefs. I mean, the name Too Tough to Tame, the first Speedway, there is so much history at this track, it's unheard of.
Yeah, that is definitely for sure. And ultimately, it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on all throughout the weekend. We look at practice, we look at qualifying, we're looking towards past results at some of these concrete-based tracks. Like we have Bristol and Dover to go off of. These are all going to be factors into the different drivers that we're going to be keeping in mind for our picks this week.
Absolutely.
You know, speaking of drivers, how about we just get right on into it here and go forth and talk about some of our top price drivers to watch there, Rich. I see so far that it looks like we overlap. Do we? We do not overlap actually in this category here.
Well, because I decided to go different. I am in complete agreement with your picks. Okay. I would argue that all the top price drivers all the way down to Bell at this point in time, without practice, are worthy of consideration. Bell led a lot of laps last year. Hamlin, these other guys, everybody we have in this list between the two of us and then some have both track history, team history, and documented success here. So this is pretty tough. I don't disagree with any of your picks here, Sean. So go ahead and throw them out there.
So the three that I've put out here are Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., and Chase Elliott. All three of these drivers, they've been very, very good at Darlington in the past. Larson, as we know, he's been kind of the driver to watch every time that NASCAR uses the intermediate rules package. Darlington is going to be using that this week. He's won in 2 of the 3 races that have used this package that are at least close to 1.5 miles. So he's definitely one driver that, for the equipment, bar none, is, I think, going to be one of the favorites to lock in. Truex, he's a driver that's also been really good this season. He's been top 10 most weeks. And then Chase Elliott, as we mentioned, he's been on a hot streak of top 5s, and Darlington is a really good track for him overall.
Yeah, he's been decent here. I think out of 15 races, 7 top 10s, 4 top 5s. Not nearly as successful as his partner Kyle Larson has been in his 13 or so races here. Honestly, here's the deal, Sean. If I didn't see your list and I was given 4 guys, it would have been the one guy I'll list first here and your 3 guys. I have in my core bets listed, there's a lot of overlap there with what you got, and I'm with you. Chase, this almost has the perfect story written for Chase Elliott to win this week. If you want to bet storylines, the Earnhardt scheme, Elliott hasn't won. Well, I guess he did win at Texas, but he's been trending up. This would be kind of a fun story, but I can't get away from Denny Hamlin. He's my favorite bet for the week. I can't get away from Denny Hamlin. I'm kind of all in on Hamlin this week. I was off of him last week. Now I like him this week for all the same reasons. They had a bunch of bad luck last week. He was the fastest car. It didn't work out. He was one of the fastest cars here last year, and it didn't work out. I've just got one of those funny itches in my arm that's saying it's a Denny Hamlin week, right? So give me Denny Hamlin. I can't dog William Byron. Team success. He won here last year. You got to keep him in mind. Tyler Reddick was second. He loves running high. You run high here. That's what you do. That's what you got to do. So, like I said, you could add these guys, add in a Kyle Busch, add in a Christopher Bell. I think all these guys are worth a look, are worth consideration. The problem is, to your point, we're only going to be able to pick 2. We're going to have to pick 2, but we're only going to be able to pick 2.
Yeah, unless you decide to go a little further down the price ladder. That's why I like Chase Elliott this week, where he's priced $9,800 on DraftKings. If you can get below that $10K range and still get a driver that might get you a top 5 or even better, you're going to want that in your lineup this week.
100% agree. I think that's a fantastic approach. And Kyle Busch is cheaper yet at $9,500. If you were feeling froggy. If you were feeling
$9,400.
Yeah. Oh, 94. My bad.
And Ross Chastain is another driver to mention from that tier that I also like because he's also ran pretty well and led a lot of laps at Darlington. I don't have him in my list just because he's been a little bit shaky at the finishes, but he is a driver that I feel like that should also not be ignored there too. Anyway, let's go forth and get into our mid-tier drivers to watch here, Rich. And this is where we do have a lot of overlap here, Rich.
For sure. Look, we're both on Chris Buescher. We're both on Noah Gragson. I think we both agree pricing concerning where they've been running, where the speed is just off, right? I happen to love your Bubba Wallace pick. People forget Bubba Wallace was real close to capturing a win here last year or the year before. So I happen to really think that's a savvy pick by you, Sean. I can't get away from Eric Jones. His price point seems so low. He's only one of 3 drivers or 4 drivers with multiple wins here. It's him. Truex each have 2. Denny Hamlin has 4. And actually, I think the other driver I was thinking of was Kevin Harvick with 3. So, he's one of the few with 2 wins. I understand he's got the injury, but his price point, it's really tough, man. It's tough to get away from him.
I can understand that. And you know what? Jones is a driver that I can consider, but I do have some concerns with the injury getting back up so soon. And also the fact of the matter is that he's been better at the fall in Darlington compared to the spring, because he is not even finished inside the top 10 in the spring since he was with Joe Gibbs Racing. That's how long ago with that. So with that in mind.
Good point, bro.
With that in mind, I'm not as high on Eric Jones as some might be this week, but I do think, though, that the stat line is there, especially with just his history alone, that if everything falls into place, he is one that could be sneaky to watch.
Well, let's get into our bargain shopping here, man. I got to tell you, I was not comfortable with this tier at all. Like, I played around with a lineup, and I built a lineup doing what you did. I went a little cheaper as my top tier guy, a Chase Elliott, a Kyle Busch, something like that, to save a couple $100 or $1,200, $1,500, whatever it may be. I did not want to really count on these guys. Maybe practice skews me a little bit, but why don't you lead us off here, Sean?
So I have 4 drivers technically listed for sleepers and bargains. I know we usually list 3, but there is there's 2 drivers I'm kind of back and forth on. They're around the same price. So I'll just name the 2 that I know I definitely have in, which are Carson Hocevar, which you also have, Rich, and Todd Gilliland. Todd Gilliland, he's been pretty good at Darlington in the spring with 2 top 20 finishes, and he scored positive place differential in almost all of his starts at Darlington. So with that in mind, especially for the price point, he's probably my favorite punt play of the week. 5,500 on DraftKings, 4,000 on FanDuel. I mean, the price for the potential production, and we even named it there with Front Row Motorsports and the Team Penske Alliance. They're going to be one of the better 4 teams. And if you get a driver capable of finishing top 20 or maybe even top 15 like he did last week, for that sort of price point, that's somebody you may want to really consider there, Rich. And as for the other 2 drivers there, it's Josh Berry and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I know I'm going to need to explain this one a little there, so I'm just going to say that Barry, he's in Stewart-Haas Racing Equipment. We know SHR, they've been putting up some solid results. Barry's been finding his way towards the top 15 a lot this year, and for the price, I do like that. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's a driver that's consistently finished in the top 20 in the last couple of races at Darlington, with 5 top 20 finishes in the last 6 races. For the price point in mind, I do think that Stenhouse, we know he has a reputation of being Ricky Spinhouse, of course, but I know that JTG's been finding speed a little bit here and there, and overall, he's a driver that I think could be worth the risk.
I don't disagree. And you know me, I know Ricky. I've met him. I don't know him. I've met him. He was really great to me when I was on the go-kart with my cousin and stuff. But I'm with you. I just want to throw this out. My guys, Austin Dillon, out of 15 races at Darlington, he has 13 lead lap finishes. He's a bottom-tier price guy. All I'm looking for is this guy to potentially finish on the lead lap, and I'm going to be happy. He tends to do that. I can't get away from Carson Hocevar. He just keeps impressing me, Sean. Week in and week out, no matter the track. And Daniel Hemrick, we talked about it. The guy starts in the back. He just finishes races. His price point is so cheap, it's hard to get away from him.
That's a fair and valid point. Let's go forth and get into our betting core fours. I'll start out with mine. And, well, really, it should be almost both of us because we have 3 of the 4 same drivers in both of our core fours there. We're both on Kyle Larson at plus 380, both on Denny Hamlin at plus 450, and both on MTJ, Martin Truex Jr. at plus 700. There's no debate. Those 3 drivers are all really good at this track. I had Chase Elliott at plus 1,300. I like the odds there, especially with the sort of production, his hot streak, Darlington being a good track for him. Give me Elliott at plus 1,300 there.
I'm with you. I debated long and hard between Elliott at 1,300 and Kyle Busch at 1,400. Like I wouldn't argue one way or another for one of those guys. Both of those guys, I think, are doing kind of the same things. I do think Elliott's probably got a little bit better chance to win than Kyle Busch does. Busch has a little bit better history here, but look, those are both kind of long shots at 13 and 1,400 or 13 or 14 to 1. I do think, my opinion, the winner is probably going to come out of those top three we listed. I am not shocked that we overlap there. The teams and the history really points to those three drivers and recent runs. If we really want to be honest, the last 3 to 4 weeks runs will also have you pointing to those same three guys.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also going to mention around that same range, too, we have Ross Chastain at plus 1,300, too. He's been displaying speed at several points during the season, especially on some of these 1.5 mile and concrete tracks. So something to keep in mind there, too. Let's go forth and get into our DFS core fours real quick here. I'm just going to name mine here. We overlap a little bit here too, but I have Kyle Larson, 11,300 on DK, 14K on FanDuel. Chase Elliott, 9,800 on DraftKings, 10,500 on FanDuel. Chris Buescher, 7,800 on DraftKings, and he's at that price. We keep talking about this when we've had Mark on the past few weeks, 8,200. We keep finding drivers we like at that price there on FanDuel, and Chris Buescher is that price this week. And then I have Todd Gilliland as my basically cheap value in order to round out my core four, 5,500 on DK and 4,000 on FanDuel. Rich, tell us your core four.
We're real similar, man. Give me Denny Hamlin, 11.5. I don't mind saving the 200 and Kyle Larson. In a perfect scenario, I'd love to use both, but you got to punt deep if you go that route. Chase Elliott, I do feel is underpriced at 9,800. Like I said, you could easily bump down to a Kyle Busch at 9,400. You're probably in the same tier. Chris Buescher, again, just like you said, underpriced. I still like Noah Gragson at 7,200. That just seems way cheap for how. And he has really incredible history here at Darlington in the Xfinity series, like really good history.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a hard time getting away from him at 7,200. If you do those four, for example, you don't have to punt, but you do have to look at someone like an Eric Jones, or maybe paying up a little bit more to a Bubba Wallace and having to get a little bit creative on that last pick. But I'm really kind of scared to punt too deep this week, Sean.
Yeah, it makes sense considering that we have limited options that we can trust, and it kind of changes week to week that when you get towards, like, say, 6,500 or 6K and below.
And this track is so notoriously hard on equipment. Top teams struggle. You know what I mean? So I have a hard time putting a lot of faith and inexperience in teams that historically just, you know what I mean?
Yep. This is what we say. It's not the friendliest place for even rookie drivers or drivers with little experience.
It's tough. You have to be willing to commit to that high line. You have to be willing to understand you're going to get into the wall a little bit. But those who don't, who keep it clean and keep it pointing forward, and that's what Bubba did till he got wrecked last year, for example, you'll be a factor, you know? If you can take care of your tires and manage your fuel and stay out of the wall, it seems easy, but I'm telling you, when we watch, there's a reason they repaint those walls after every single event.
It's true. The Darlington stripe is a very famous thing.
So, well, Sean, should we tell them about Fantasy Guru one more time? Check out our content at fantasyguru.com. This podcast, the Race Guru Thunder Hour, is brought to you by fantasyguru.com and the Elite Plus Network. Please head over to the website, check it out. We've got a promo if you're just interested in the racing stuff. $40 gets you all our content on racing, plus NHL, NBA, MMA, PGA, horse racing, and more. $40, 12 months, get you covered for all of it. And don't forget about our 50 special, 50% off, the all-inclusive, all-in MVP package that gets you everything. With the 50% off, it'll be $400 for everything. All DFS, all betting, every sport under the sun, all of our elite data. There's so much data in there. My wife didn't know there was that much data in there. She was like, wait, there's that in there? So please check it out. Give us a shout out. This will be the best pricing you'll get on the all-in package. Take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Go forth and get it if you want to become a winner like the rest of the Fantasy Guru community.
Winners win, baby.
You got it.
On behalf of Sean Engel, I'm Rich Maletto. Give Sean a follow at SeanE247 on the Xbox machine. You can find me at Fantasy Bosco. It's been a real good luck this weekend. Peace.